Hi, Grandma here, and I'm reading chapter 2 called I Grow Up, and I'm on the bottom of page 6, and I'm starting with the paragraph that begins, Our slaves. Our slaves are civil servants and teachers. I know for sure that many captured slaves are better educated than their masters. Slaves run our households, do the cooking and the laundry. Some are artisans, and some keep the peace. Some are even soldiers. Of course, many are the laborers who clean up, build roads and houses, and work in the mines. As I grew up, I had my own slave who took care of my clothes, looked after my safety, taught me manners, and how to behave like a proper Greek. We Greek people live simply, even the rich ones. We have contempt for the sumptuous lifestyle of the Persians, even though we are somewhat fascinated by it. Our houses aren't big, and they don't have a lot of furniture. We have plain chairs and low tables for eating. My bed was a couch in the daytime, and there are no cupboards or closets. We fold our clothes and linens into wooden chests. When I get dressed in the morning, I put on my chiton, a squarish cloth with holes for the head and arms. If it was cold, I wore a cloak over my chiton. If I had been poor, my cloak would be my blanket at night. We Greeks eat simply: barley bread, olives, fruit, beans, and cheese, sometimes fish, and rarely meat. For something sweet, we use honey. Sometimes we drink goat's milk. Usually we drink water or water mixed with wine. Slaves draw the water from a well or bring it in jars from a public fountain. Could a house ever have a water supply inside? What a dream! But we did have a room with a bathtub, which a slave filled with heated water. And we had a cooking room with a grill where slaves did the cooking. That grill gave us some heat when it was cold. The Persians think the Greek way of life is odd. They love rich foods and ornaments, pomp and splendor. They think they have earned it by conquering the world. As I got older, when I went to school from sunrise to sunset, I learned the letters of the Greek alphabet and the letters of the cuneiform alphabet that the Persians used. At first, we wrote with a stylus on a wax-covered tablet. When we became better writers, we wrote in ink on papyrus, a paper imported from Egypt. We listened as our teachers sang and recited the works of Homer, which told of great wars long past. I learned the Iliad and the Odyssey by heart, but I wondered if those things had really happened or if they were only stories. I often thought about that. Okay, first of all, how is their school different from your school? Well, sometimes they were taught by slaves. What about the length of the school day? Sunrise to sunset's a long time. And they had to learn how to write the Greek alphabet and the Persian alphabet. And here's a picture of them. And the teachers sang or recited the stories that they wanted the children to learn. And they memorized it. I am telling you, those are long books, the Iliad and the Odyssey. They are not short books. For them to have memorized them. Our wars with the Persians seem much more real, of course. They were recent, when some of our Greek city-states began a revolt against the Persians. When I was 6, the European Greeks had defeated the Persian Emperor Xerxes on the mainland. We cheered their victory, but the Persians were still overlords here in Helicarnasis because he lives in Asia, not in Europe. We recited our lessons to music, and we learned to dance, to play the lyre and the pipes, to speak well and to argue. Debating is a big part of being an educated Greek. Does your school have that also? Some schools do. We studied astronomy and geometry, but I particularly liked geography. Our Greek geographers were wonderful. First, there was Anaximander, of Miletus, who was more than 100 years ago, had made a map of the world surrounded by ocean. How did he know that? And here's the map. Does that look like any map you have ever seen? Not me. Here he has the ocean. Here's Europe. Here's Egypt. Here's Asia, Persian Empire. So, and this is Greece here in the middle. So in some ways, it's kind of accurate, showing where Europe and Egypt are across the Mediterranean, but it's certainly not round like that. And then there was Hakaytus, also from Miletus, who had recently traveled the world himself. His world map was a real improvement, and he made other more detailed maps. And here is his map. And his map is beginning to look a little bit more like the maps that we know, other than the circle. But ours is a circle too, if you think about it. It's just that this was the only known world. So here we have Europe, and we have Italy. We can actually see the countries, Egypt and Libya, and over here we have Asia. Sports weren't my favorite, but they were an important part of our school day. They were outside in the palestra. We ran, we jumped, we wrestled and boxed, we shot arrows and flung discs. And we learned the art of war, even how to be a soldier. Our Greek soldiers are called hoplites. Some of us served in the army for 2 years when we finished school. If you were rich, life in Helicarnasis was good. Men spent most of their time outside the house. Women never went out alone, only with their slaves or with women friends and relatives. Men usually did the shopping along with their slaves, mingling with the crowds at the agora, which you recall is a giant marketplace. They talked politics and philosophy and argued with their friends. They went to the theater, listened to public speakers, and went to the law courts to hear cases. As I grew up, at first I did all the things the other men did, but I was restless and uneasy. What I really liked was go down to the harbor and roam around the boats that came and went from all over the Mediterranean Sea. The sights, smells, the sails and masts, the sense of adventure excited me. I listened to the stories the traders told about Egypt and Persia and the Greek mainland, and about caravans from mysterious places where there were strange people, even monsters. I listened to the tales of sailors who rowed the triremes, the Greek warships. The traders were independent businessmen. The rowers were full-time professionals, the best paid workers in Greece. Why do you think that is? Well, because the rowers are what provides the momentum for the ships. They may have sails, but the rowers have to get them safely in and out of the harbor, and they give them that extra speed. I was still in Helicarnasis, but now it seemed too small. It seemed more of an outpost than the center of the world. And here's a picture of him looking at all the ships. And here's a picture of one is them wrestling. Another picture is them learning the art of war. Okay, chapter 3, my travels begin. In Helicarnasis, a revolt was brewing. First, Artemisia had her son, then her son had died. Now, Lydamius, Artemisia's grandson, was the tyrant. He was cruel and iron-handed. Most of us hated him. We talked about the Greek colonies along the coast of the Aegean Sea that had fought and defeated their Persian rulers to become independent city-states. Why couldn't Helicarnasis do that too? So we held secret meetings and made plans for an uprising against Lygdamis. My family was deeply involved in the plot, but Lydamas got wind of the planned uprising. He punished the plotters and sent my family into exile with orders to stay away from Helicarnasis. With our slaves and our possessions crowded onto a small cargo ship, we sailed north along the coast of Asia Minor to the island of Samos, which had freed itself from the Persian rule some years before. And we have a picture of them sailing up the coast. Maybe there was something about Samos that encouraged famous people. The great Greek mathematician Pythagoras also lived there. So did the slave Aesop. He was the one who wrote the famous fables. Samos was bigger than Helicarnasis and had a center of culture, but it didn't satisfy me either. Again, I took to wandering around the waterfront. Look where Samos is. And here's another map. And Samos is up here near the Black Sea. It's right down here. And here is Rhodes. And these are dates were here. And here's the Mediterranean. And here's mainland Greece. With our slaves and our possessions, oh, I already said that. It's just in the right place to be a trading center for goods for all over the Mediterranean Sea. It's close enough to the mainland to connect it with the trade routes to the north and into Asia. Some ships even sailed all the way to India and came back loaded with spices, tortoiseshell, and pearls. I asked, but I never found anyone who could give me firsthand information about the existence of the sea beyond Europe to the north and west, even though Anaximander and Hakaytus showed ocean there. Still, tin and amber do come to us from what one may call the ends of the earth. They considered England or the United Kingdom the ends of the earth. I watched the boats loading wine, honey, olives, and pottery to trade. Samos is famous for its pottery. I watched boats coming in from the mysterious north, unloading hides and timber, mackerel and other fish, even gold. I watched them unloading sacks of grain, great rolls of papyrus and linen cloth from Egypt, raisins and figs from Rhodes, dates and cedar logs from Phoenicia, and ivory from Libya. The docks were piled with sacks of all sizes, with jars of wine, oil, piles of dried fish, bales of papyrus cloth, coils of rope, baskets of dried fruit, and crowded with loaders and unloaders, laughing and shouting in some languages I never heard. We have another picture. I walked around the docks, talking to the traders who spoke Greek, asking about their travels. At first, the traders were suspicious of me. Why would I want to make friends with them? Traders weren't considered important, even though they were. But I was eager to listen to their adventures and had stories of my own to trade with them, myths and tales they had never heard. After a while, they accepted me as one of their own. It became clear to me what I wanted to do. To travel, not as a trader, but as an explorer, even a kind of scientist. I wanted to see the world for myself as the map makers had, maybe to see even more. Should I accept another man's view of the world? Of course, there were problems that I would have to figure out. I only spoke Greek. Could I find translators who spoke both Greek and the barbarian languages? I could carry rolls of papyrus to write things down, but I could also depend on my excellent memory, thanks to all that training with Homer's poetry. I would have to find ships and traders going where I wanted to go, and I would certainly want to travel inland, but how could I travel when I'm not aboard a ship? I don't find riding a horse comfortable, but maybe I could find a horse and cart. Probably I would walk. We Greeks walk long distances. Where to start my travels? And we have a picture of him in a cart. The north was mysterious. There didn't seem to be any real cities, at least nobody talked about them. What kind of people lived there? The traders said they were savages, even cannibals, they whispered. I could pay for my passage, so with the help of my trading friends, I arranged to sail on a ship that was going north. The ship wasn't big, less than 30 paces long. It had a big square sail hung from a mast in the middle of the boat. No oarsmen to help us when the wind wasn't blowing. Only warships had oars and oarsmen. And there wasn't much deck, just a wide platform around the sides. The cargo was stored below in the middle of the boat. We sailed north along the Asian coast, between the islands and the mainland, keeping close to shore so the captain could see familiar landmarks. We did not sail at night. So, saying goodbye to my friends and family, I began my travels, my inquiries and adventures. It would be years before I returned from my first great journey. And we're going to stop there. Our next chapter is called To the North, and he talks about his first trip, which lasts for years. Okay, bye-bye.